John Eustace has addressed the media ahead of Derby County's fixture versus Portsmouth this upcoming weekend at Fratton Park in what is going to be one of the most important fixtures of Derby County's season. Now, I've spoke about it time and time again this season, how important this run of fixtures is going to be, and obviously we've got Pompey now, we face Hull City, Luton Town and Stoke before the final day. Obviously West Brom is in there as well, but these are some absolutely massive fixtures for Derby County, and it's a really unfortunate situation that Derby County find themselves in, with two of their very important players in Sondre, Langas and Callum looking set to miss out this weekend. Now, obviously both players have been playing through injuries for Derby County across the course of the last few weeks. We saw Callum pick up that knock again versus Preston North End after about 5 minutes, and then go on to play probably the best game of his Derby County career, and obviously he's sat out the last couple, but will he be back this weekend? It's looking very unlikely. Obviously Sondre Langas has played the last two, obviously headed into the final. I think it was 20 or so minutes versus Burnley. He had to come off, which saw Kane Wilson drop in at right centre back, and it's a difficult conversation for John Eustace to have with Sondre Langas, who, as we know, is awaiting surgery and is sort of holding off until the end of the season. But that is a conversation that will be had again for John Eustace and Sondre Langas. But is it a deal that they're going to be able to get done over the course of sort of the next few weeks to get that surgery in place, get it done and get him ready for next season? Because as much as, yes, we've got to stay in the Championship, we've also got to make sure that we don't kill one of our best players' career, which I think Sondre Langas will go on to be for Derby County, and I believe he has been already. Now, obviously, with those doubts, it opens up the door for a possibility for Jake Rooney, Eric Peters, maybe even a Caden Jackson, because if we stay in that sort of 3-5-2 situation, then we need either a centre-back to come in, or we need to bring in a right wing-back or a left wing-back. And obviously Eric Peters can play on the left, Caden Jackson can play on the right, obviously not his best position, and obviously then you could flip Wilson over to the other side and drop Fozzie in at centre-back. It's sort of going to be a very interesting discussion over the course of the next few days to see where John Eustace does take it over the course of the game versus Saturday. Obviously, they went on to discuss Corey Blackett-Taylor and Kemar Roofe. They're set to be out for the next couple of weeks, which is obviously... It's disappointing still to have those sorts of players out, because obviously... I think Corey Blackett-Taylor will be a very good player for Derby County once he's back fit and available and under John Eustace. I think he'll absolutely thrive when we eventually sort of move into the system which we're going to play next year, because I can't see us playing that 3-5-2. For Kemar Roofe, obviously, it's disappointing to have him out after bringing him in and him not really getting the opportunity. It's just a really difficult situation for both of those two players. Now, John Eustace was asked a couple of questions about the division, and obviously he went on to discuss how obviously he'd love to be higher, but he's dealing with things as they come. And I think it's really important that we've got a manager with such adaptability and such sort of... It's not a negative mindset that we're used to having over the course of, in my opinion, the last 18 months with these sorts of situations. Like with Paul Warne, yes, we all knew that in League One the aim was the title, but it always felt as if we was always putting ourselves on the back foot in the way we were playing and the way Paul Warne would talk about the players and the teams we were facing. Whereas under John Eustace, it feels like there's much more of a focus on ourselves and being the best players that we can be, and the best fans we can be, the best club we can be, the best staff behind the scenes that they can be. And I think that's really important for a club that is trying to move forward, because if you've always got that sort of mindset of, oh, the opposition can do that, the opposition can do this, and we need to do this and this and this to stop that from happening, instead of focusing on what you can do, I think it causes like major problems. And I think that's what we've seen this season under Paul Warne, up until obviously John Eustace came in, was sort of more of a case of trying to combat what the opposition can do rather than trying to do what we can do. And I think that ultimately is what then ended up giving us that losing streak that we went on. And obviously then under John Eustace, I think we've gone so back to basics and back to that sort of conversation of these players can play football and can score goals, we just need to put them in the right positions. And that's something which I think John Eustace has done really well, and I think he's adapted really well from the first day when he came in. Obviously that QPR game, what was it, a 4-4-2, 4-2-3-1, whatever you want to class it as. Played that for a couple of games, didn't really work. Went into a back three, and it's essentially gone from strength to strength since we've moved into this back three, and I'm really delighted to see where it's gone, and I'm really impressed to see where it can continue to go. Now, obviously, John Eustace did start to look ahead to the weekend and was asked some questions by, I think it was Dom Dietrich on BBC Radio Derby this week, and he was talking about the importance of Saturday and the preparation for all the games, and obviously then went on to talk about how difficult preparation can be with the schedule the way it is in the Championship. Obviously, like, we've gone from having a couple of weeks where we had no midweek game to, I think we've played 4 games within 14 days or something like that, which is obviously like quite rough on the players and quite rough on the staff as well. And obviously, because a lot of them, their days off will have actually been spent as travelling days, especially those who are with the first team. And it's sort of, don't get me wrong, I know like players and coaching staff have played fairly decently, but some of those others behind the scenes that are sort of working with the first team and are involved in the travelling setup and things like that ultimately don't get the same sort of pay. And like, it is very, very difficult for them to be able to keep up to date with everything and get everything in good working order, but that's why you have the systems in place. And John Eustace was talking about the importance of the preparations and things like that, and how important it is to make sure you're looking ahead to the next game. You're always looking at the next game, because obviously we could go at the weekend and go and lose 3-0, and if we then dwell on that and then heading into the game after that, which is Luton Town, we're then going to go in with that sort of negative mindset, and that's something that you don't want to happen. Now, obviously, within the schedule that we've got going on in the Championship at the moment, with that sort of 4 games in 14 days, obviously it was Wednesday, Saturday, Tuesday, Saturday. It's really, really difficult to be able to make sure you can get the right amount of preparation and recovery into the legs when it comes to being on the training field and things like that. But these are the sort of times where you get the most out of the analysis, and you can use analysis more within these moments, because you can have the players doing sort of recovery workouts and things like that, and you can have them watching clips and things like that of their performance, of the upcoming games that they're going to be facing against those oppositions and things like that. And a lot of these players will take this on themselves and do it themselves, but some of the players will have to have it put in front of them in team meetings and things like that, which ultimately isn't a problem, because that's the whole point of having the coaching staff there. They'll point out the things that they want you to know about, and obviously making sure the preparation is perfect is the most important thing for obviously John Eustace and for the Derby County team, and that sort of all links into that adaptability. If you go a couple of weeks ago, it was Saturday to Saturday, Saturday to Saturday, whereas obviously the last couple of weeks it's going to have been 4 games in 14 days when we hit, well, I think it'll be less than 14 days by the time we hit Saturday. It'll be something like 10 days, 4 games in 10 days, where they'll probably have only done maybe 4 training sessions max, I could imagine. Maximum only 4 on the grass sessions, which obviously then goes into that adaptability of making sure you can keep yourself ticking over if you're not training on the grass and things like that. And that's obviously really important for not just John Eustace to be able to deal with, but also for those players. And I think John Eustace so far has done an excellent job at coaching this group of players. He's got them getting right back to basics and making things work for Derby County. Now, obviously, I mentioned earlier about Sondre, Langas and Callum being doubts heading into this one, and I mentioned the options that Derby County could have. Now, for me, there's obviously been big discussions about Jake Rooney over the course of the last few weeks and the last few months, essentially, and I do think it's really important we get into that sort of conversation, because this, for me, is one of the reasons why I've been shouting from the rooftops for him to play for the best part of since January, because we're in a position now where we're playing a back 3 and we've only got 2 fit natural centre-backs. We don't have arguably a fit left wing-back, because I'd say that Craig Forsyth isn't necessarily a left wing-back anymore, and it's a really difficult position that we're in, and Jake Rooney's not played all season, and if he ends up being slotted in at the weekend, it's a really difficult game to come into, a relegation 6-pointer with 5 games to go if you've not played all season. And that's one of the reasons why, in my personal opinion, I think we're more likely to see Eric Peters or Caden Jackson step into the team, because I think that we're probably going to go with Wilson on the left, a back three of Fozzie, Clark and Phillips with Caden Jackson as the right wing back. There's also the possibility that we could go to a flat four, Fozzie on the left, Clark, Phillips and Wilson on the right. But I think we're probably better off with Wilson in a wing back position. Obviously, you could also have it so Wilson stays on the right, but it's obviously a really sort of important conversation that needs to be had, and it's one of the reasons why I've been so sort of on at Derby County for not giving Jake Rooney an opportunity yet, because he's been fit since end of September. He's been playing games for 21s, etc. since the end of September, and ultimately there is no reason why he couldn't have played half an hour, 60 minutes at some point over the course of the last 5-6 months. And that's sort of the problem we find ourselves in, is that we have a defender who I think many fans understand that he is capable of playing football, but not many sort of understand to the level, and myself included in that. Now, I personally believe that he's more than capable of playing at this level, but I understand the reason behind protecting him, because maybe next season, if we were to go down, he'd be a starting centre-half for us, or even if we go up, he could be sort of the next man in line to sort of take over from that Phillips if he doesn't return, take over from Curtis Nelson, who's obviously going to be out injured to start the season. And that's obviously sort of a big conversation which needs to be had, because realistically, in my opinion, I'm not saying Jake Rooney is good enough. I don't know. I've not watched him in training since 2020. I've not seen him train or anything since 2023, maybe. I think it was when I was at Derby, and obviously he's not played in the first team for well over a year. And that's sort of the problem we face for ourselves now, is that we've got a player on the bench who we don't really know what he's capable of. And yes, the coaching staff will know if he's good enough and things like that, but ultimately I always think you never know how good someone is until you chuck them in at the deep end. And I think you can say that for a lot of players. There's a lot of players who wash out of academies and things like that and end up coming back and going and playing Premier League football and things like that. You look at some of the players that were released from Chelsea, some of the players that we've released ourselves that have gone on to bigger and better things, playing in the Europa League and things like that. And like, I'm not saying that Jake Rooney's going to be one of them players, don't get me wrong, but if you don't give players a chance to prove themselves, they're never going to be able to show you that they're good enough. And it's going to be difficult to see if Jake Rooney does get that opportunity this weekend. There was no further news on Ben Osborne. Obviously, it was said a couple of days ago that he would be sort of back in training in a week. So I guess that would be next week. So obviously no information needed for that anyway. But it's a really difficult situation that John Eustace finds himself in heading into this weekend's game. Will Callum and Sondre Langas magically end up on the pitch or on the bench? That's a question to ask over the course of the next few hours and things like that. But obviously, if you have not done so already, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on that notification bell to stay tuned for all of my latest Derby County content that's coming your way on the channel. And it's going to be a very, very interesting one on Saturday. So make sure you let me know your thoughts down in the comment section. Who would you play? Jake Rooney, or would you put in a Caden Jackson? Would you go to a back four? Let me know down in the comments, and I'll catch you in my next one.